So yeah, technical issues. The platform that we use is technical as well, and we usually turn up places, and it doesn't always run to plan. So, it's nice to see someone else going through what we went through. But you dealt with it without getting stressed.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Okay, so you asked, for me, the initiative, I know you talked Mind Matters, but, the mental health, the mates in mind, the whole thing about well-being in construction, mental health, 27 years I've worked in construction. As I've shared, I've worked my way up from a broom. I fell onto a building site at 21, worked my way up from a broom to a wheelbarrow. Then, someone gave me a shovel, started to drive the machines, started to read the drawings. It went on to run multi-million-pound jobs, but as I did that and working within the industry, I did notice there was a lot of pressure and stress, and it, as much as it affected me, it affected those around me, and the relationship issues, late deliveries, late traffic, it can be a multitude of things, plant breaking down, drawings being wrong, measurements not coming on time, architect getting the drawing wrong, engineer not giving the right information, setting out, all the whole smorgasbord of table of stuff that could go wrong, and and just seeing that it impacted up. They talk about mental health, but we like to say it's inner well-being, because it's about what's going on inside us. And one thing that you talked about, the problem and what they're trying to instigate, is that conversation around mental health, whereas we've always tried to come from a place of mental, not mental ill health, but mental health. So actually having conversations that are beneficial to us. Pardon? That are beneficial to. Okay, I've got feedback now, so I'm just going to carry on going because I can hear myself talk.
I can hear you as well, so keep going.
I'm going to keep going. So yeah, it's like that kind of distraction. It's that inner voice inside of our heads that causes a lot of our mental ill health, and having awareness around that and tools to help deal with that, as we go about our daily lives, is what we saw the real problem as. And I'm not going to give everything away to start with, but it was seeing that how it was affecting people around me working in construction, and not just in construction, but outside and at home, and discovering there was a different way by developing self-awareness is what we've developed and what we're going to talk about today, I hope. So is that okay with you, Maria? Is that?
Absolutely, yeah. Can you tell me a bit more about sort of what got you, what position you ended up in, and how you kind of got out of that, and how you kind of discovered the tools to help people?
I eventually, I live in Brighton, and as you come down from New Haven, there's a roundabout as you get to Brighton, and I actually drove around the roundabout one day, and I wanted to commit suicide. I'd got to a point where I had nowhere to turn. I'd got lost in my own blackness, and I was using alcohol to deal with the stress and the pressures of life. But it basically took me, and it's funny because it was a roundabout, and I just kept going round, but I couldn't find. Eventually I come off, and I managed to get help. But I got to a point where I was suicidal, and I had to do something different. And the tools that I've discovered have supported me and those around me, as I shared and we've shared and developed what we've developed, has made a difference to people. Yeah, but yeah, I was suicidal. Yeah. I was gone.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I can relate to that a little bit because I suffered from depression a few years ago. And it wasn't work related. It was to do with, what was happening outside of work. But I understand that the position that you can get to, whereby 1 minute you feel okay, and then the next minute you could literally just jump off a cliff. So having sort of been there myself, I do kind of understand that. So anyway, so you obviously you found tools to get yourself out of that, but I think through that was when you met Andy, is that right?
Yeah. I met Andy on a personal professional development workshop and discovered, like myself, he was a builder, and we started having similar conversations, and we were being honest about how we felt and what was going on in our lives, and we created a friendship. I don't know if Andy wants to take over from that, if Andy can hear me.
Hello there.
Hi.
I can hear you. Marie, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah. So do you want to tell me about building site to Boardroom and how this all came about?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, my name's Andy Dean. Building site to Boardroom, as Dave was saying. Yeah, I've got issues. It came about after meeting Dave on the workshops. We started to facilitate and run workshops ourselves, and all the tools and all the teachings that we were picking up on the workshops, we were bringing back to our day-to-day jobs. I'm a company owner. I was running a business, plumbing and heating, had a bunch of guys and ladies working, and I started to share the tools, the ways of looking after and approaching things in a different way on a daily basis. And what we were finding is that people were responding really well. And it wasn't just having a conversation about, we never called it mental health then, but it was a conversation about how we were feeling. But actually using that conversation about how we were feeling with a bit more direction, rather than just have a conversation about it. So by sharing the tools, what I noticed in my business was it had a really positive effect on everybody that was working there. And we started to look after each other a little bit more, and started to understand each other a little bit more, and started to relate to each other just as people. My issues of stress and anger were the same issues and emotions, stress and anger as everybody that worked for me. And then we started to notice the company directives. Marie?
Yeah, carry on, sorry.
Yeah, we started to notice the company directives. Sorry, you started to know the directives being spoken about by government, by the CITB, by the CCS, by the HSE, all asking for the well-being of the workforce to start to be considered. And there was that little epiphany moment. Dave and I looked at each other and thought, well, really, this is what we're doing on a small scale. And then we started to share those directives with some friends of ours who are in the construction industry, again, company owners, developers. And we thought that if we could somehow run a pilot scheme, we could actually start to do something on a much bigger scale, actually really offer something of value and worth. So one of our directors invited us into a company that he had some connections to, and we ran a pilot scheme for 6 months. And we worked with the CEOs, the company owners, senior management, middle management. Then we crossed onto the site management, and then the site operatives. And what we learned really there was the whole essence of the training. We learned the language, we learned the approach, we learned that when you can create that safe environment and people feel trusted enough to share, then they will. And we created a training manual that we thought was going to be the answer to all the delivery issues. And then we realised that if you really want to make a big difference, you need to create an app. And all that time that was going on, we were bringing a company into formation. So building site to Boardroom was really developed through the pilot, and it was developed to meet the building site literally to the man in the boardroom. So it's an inclusive program that had been researched through the company. And that's really how it came about.
So can you tell me a bit more about the tools that you use? Because I mean, I've done I did the course that's online, which I thought was great. But could you tell me a bit more about the tools that you use and how you kind of, how they were received? So when you first started working with people, so you'd gone on these courses yourself and learned tools to deal with your own kind of stress and things like that. How did you then what are the tools and how did you start working with people with these?
On the approach?
Shall I go? You go?
Yeah, go for it, Dave. You go in, I'll join up.
Okay, interestingly enough, one of the things I had to learn was relationship skills, how to relate to myself and others. Because, being in this environment, I'm probably more in relationship with the men I was working with than I was my own wife, but there was a win-win, because as I developed the relationships with myself and the men on site, I was also developing with my wife. So, our relationship changed in its dynamic because of what I understood. But coming back to what you're saying is, started to work with demolition blokes and start to share about some relationship skills. I'd have a demolition man come back in and say, my relationship has changed with my teenage daughter because I've done this differently. We had stressed out foreman going, I'm not taking my anger out on road rage no more because I'm taking responsibility for how I feel and not blaming on other drivers. So it it was interesting, as I said to you, you don't know when one thought is going to make a difference, because it's like when you get an insight into how our stress is created, then, things can change. So, it was still things, the relationship skills and not getting so stressed and not, I remember working with a fellow and he'd always throw the tools everywhere. He'd always just throw his tools in the first thing. And then he just eventually went, I'm getting stressed over nothing, So the impact is seen differently for me, for when we've been doing this. I don't know if you want to share a bit, Andy.
Yeah, really, what the approach is, it's bringing in just simple reflective practices where you can just, for yourself, you can just take a little bit of time to look at what the situation is, how you're approaching it. If the situation is, if it's a stressful situation, it will be a stressful situation. We're always going to be faced with challenges and in our daily lives. It's just if we want a different outcome, we have to change our response. So we just started to introduce the response difference, where if you start to look at mindfulness about what we're thinking, where are we, what are we doing, rather than getting caught up in thoughts around the weekend, the argument I've just had, the conversation that didn't go particularly well, and just gently bring in those reflective practices and set that up in a framework where people could understand it. So rather than start using the language of mental well-being or mental health, we called it inner well-being. And what we found was by changing the language slightly, people were more receptive to it. They weren't as threatened by it. They didn't feel they were being labelled or being questioned by a psychiatrist in any way. So simple use of language, simple reflective practices, which are introduced through the training. Those of intention setting gives the mind a focus. Mindfulness brings you back into the present. Where am I? What am I doing? Can I be more present to this? And what's what we call the inner well-being process. Gratitude is another way of actually feeling better about yourself and appreciating what you've got when you have it. And then the core value approach, which just works on 4 core values, where we can actually look at our integrity about something. How am I feeling about it? And when we start talking about feelings, and we were being honest, myself and Dave, in our sharing, it allowed the other to be a bit more honest as well. And they weren't as threatened by sharing some of their experiences in life on site during their days the night before. So integrity is really about how we're feeling, taking the personal responsibility for it. He's saying these feelings are mine. And just because I'm driving home and I've had a bad day at work, the person that cuts in front of me, I don't have to take all that bad day out on them. It's not their fault. So I don't have to be angry at them. Being authentic about it was just being a bit more truthful about it, being sharing that. And that all joins together with this thing called equal dignity, whereas everybody has got the right to be heard. Everybody has the right to be curious in the other person, hearing what they're saying and being respectful of that.
Yeah. So, I mean, what I really liked about the training, so it was, you started with the intention setting. So it's actually saying, right, I intend to do this today. So before we had the call, we were having all sorts of technical difficulties, which is what we were alluding to earlier. But we did, myself and Dave had a conversation beforehand and set the intention that we were going to have a very good call and the right people were going to hear the right information at the right time, etc. So we didn't sort of get stressed about the situation. And so that there's that side of things. And I think what I liked about the course as well was that it showed 2 different scenarios. So the first scenario was one of your animated characters kind of, waking up, started the day badly, and things just continued to get worse until, it finished badly via the off license. Whereas the other one was set good intentions. It sort of keeps yourself on track during the day, and the end of the day completely different. And also the mindfulness, I mean, I think this is a really good technique for people to think about, because it's about being in the moment. So you kind of showed an animation of someone who had been told what to do, but then their mind was completely elsewhere. So even though they knew what they needed to be doing, because their mind was full of a conversation that they just had with somebody on the phone that had made them feel stressed, everything just went out of the window and they kind of went into autopilot and made a mistake, which I think is something that can happen quite often. And the other thing was around the kind of meditation as well and the breathing. You know, I remember sort of being completely stressed at work one time and taking myself and doing some breathing techniques, which completely did kind of calm me down. So I think, you know, it is a brilliant way of you know, showing people different tools and techniques that they can completely change their perceptions and their lives, basically.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. It's just that simple, reflective practice. It's not complicated. It's not hard work. It can be really. You can engage with it really simply, anywhen, at any time during the day.
And what I like, you know, is resourcing myself, because I was labelled depressed for 20 years, and I gave, you know, you know, I went to the doctor, he gave me tablets, and it wasn't until I realised I think sad thoughts occasionally that I've been able to come off the antidepressants, and I still think sad thoughts. But I've also developed, you know, an understanding of these tools of awareness that can support me. So this is why we see that it really supports the Mates in Minds initiative, because the Mates in Mind initiative are allowing conversations to open up around mental health. But, you know, as much as we can talk about the problem, how about having some tools for the solution? So, you know, that's what we would like to introduce, and you know, let's support the mental health first aider, because once he's been, you know, if he's having a day, what tools has he got? You know, and if people are going to him and going, I've had a bad day, where's he going to go? But if he's got tools in his box and he can open up, you know, his mind toolbox, then, you know, he could possibly, it'd be a different outcome from the conversation he'd have if he didn't have the awareness of the tools, you know. So I think we really support it nicely, or we'd like, you know.
So can you tell me about the Mates in Mind initiative? Because I think, was this something that started in Australia? Because I remember reading about this a couple of years ago, about this initiative in Australia. Is that right?
Andy?
Yes, it is. Yeah, and Mates in Australia, it's called Mates in Construction, and it came about primarily because there was statistically there was a disproportionate suicide rate in age range of men working in construction. So they started to look at why that was, what specific stress factors there were to do with that. And the Mates in Mind was about training up somebody on site, he or she, to look at and recognise signs of mental ill health, and then provide signposting to relevant professional services. So it was just trying to impact on the suicide rate in Australia. And what happened was the British Safety Council were keen to bring that into the UK, and they set up a health and leadership construction group to look at all the various avenues and aspects of what that could be. And Mates in Mind was a UK equivalent to that. And it's been formed. Steve Howes is the chair. Michael Whitmore has played a very active role in bringing that all together. And it's a charitable-based organisation that provides a mental health champion in your workplace, be it on-site or office, to recognise signs of mental ill health and then relevant signposting to organisations. That, in essence, that's what it is. It's partnered up with Mental Health First Aid England and Mind, who are providing some workshops and trainings around that. And the Mental Health First Aider will go on a 2-day training course to recognise the signs of mental ill health. I went along and trained as one, so I got first-hand experience of what that's like. And as Dave was saying, the support for the mental health first aider has to be there as well. And for a mental health first aider to be on site or in an office environment and to actively be able to broach a subject around mental health is a tricky call. It's a big ask for that to happen.
Yeah.
So I think just building up the relationship skills and the trust and the confidence in a conversation like that can be happening is going to take a little bit of time. And I think a foundation needs to be laid for that to take place as well. But in essence, that's what Mates in Mind is delivering.
So what are your aspirations for Building Site to Boardroom then? Where do you want to take this? Because you've started with a course. So where do you want to go next?
Well, the first course, the foundation course, is really just about that. It's like in any build, you're going to have to clear the site, and lay a good solid foundation. So hopefully the foundation course is there to do that, introducing the relationship skills, the core values, the simple reflective practices, and that gets a conversation started. You know, that makes it a bit more normal as a point of reference for everybody within construction. If they take the course, they get an understanding of it's their inner well-being we're talking about. It's not necessarily signposting off to relevant professional services and the fear around mental health. So it's breaking down the stigma, really. It's looking at the stereotypes that are there and trying to change the mindset around that, trying to dispel the misinterpretations around mental health is all about mental ill health. So bringing that into the arena for conversation, really, and people have a conversation around that and feel more comfortable with it. And then level 1 to follow, which again will be an online, and to develop the workshops that we're already running that support the online training. So we bring alive the core value approach. So we actually really start to resource individuals in relationship building, working out how they can become more self-resilient, more motivated, and ultimately it all leads to production. I'm going to be a safer, happier, more productive person if I'm feeling better about myself, and that has a direct knock on to my personal life and my work environment. So developing the courses, developing levels 1 and 2, and keep on taking the message out there, looking after the individual and looking after, let's start looking after ourselves together, really. That's our approach, rather than thinking we're on our own doing it. And looking after ourselves together as a community feel to it, which is really what we want to be starting building. And supporting the construction industry. Just supporting the construction industry, because are people going to want to use that as a career choice if it is as it's always been? It's going to be a harder and harder sell for a young person coming into the industry. Times have changed, times have moved on. And try to engage people with a platform that they can relate to. That's why we chose for the online, because it can reach a very large audience very quickly and can be managed very simply.
And how does this link with the other initiatives? So, I mean, I know you've got the Mates in Mind, but you've also got the Construction News, Mind Matters initiative at the moment. So how are they all kind of linking together?
How I see it is that the initiatives that have been launched are fantastic. I mean, they're really, really much needed, and it's already changing some ideas around what mental health is, and it's really supporting and pushing for the conversations to be had in a different way. How I see building sites of Boardroom fit, it can really help lay the foundation for the relationships to be developed and built. To have a point of reference where people can start to understand that they can just do simple reflective practices that keep them in a mentally healthy place, picking up on a proactive approach, not so much a reactive approach, resourcing the individual, giving them the tools. And once they can start to support themselves, I think we would be in a better position to help and support each other.
Yeah, so it sounds like what you're saying is, so from an individual point of view, I mean, anybody can go and do this course. I know that it is CITB funded, but obviously there are a lot of people in the industry who want CITB levy payers. So, but you know, anybody can sort of go and do this course and sort of pick up these reflective practices.
It's CPD'd as well. It's CPD'd as well.
Yeah.
The online training has been accredited to CPD, so it can add to that personal development.
All right, I'll make sure I note my time down then for the RICS.
It's a course for everybody. That's the thing. It's meeting the individual, and anger is anger, stress is stress, no matter what your position in work.
Yeah, but also from a bigger sort of perspective, what you're saying about the Mates in Mind, that's kind of looking at a more strategic approach, isn't it, into sort of getting people trained up as mental health first aiders to work on sites and in organisations to sort of support people. So that's kind of another approach, really, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And what we were thinking with the idea of the app is that what we were really asked at the beginning was, we don't want to lose any man hours, and it doesn't want to cost anything. So we got the training levy approved, and now it's CPD. Yeah. And because it's on an app, you can actually, what we found is most people engage with it because it's for them. It's not being pushed upon from an organisational point of view, something else they have to do. they're realising it's actually resourcing themselves. So, and when we do it on our own, we don't tend to lie in an exam that we're doing just for ourselves. So it's actually giving them the tools. So across the board, I think it will support any initiative that's being offered by any body, be it Mates in Mind, be it Minds, be it mental health first aid. This lays the foundations for conversations to get started, and it forms the basis of relationships to be built and developed.
Yeah. Okay. But I'm just conscious of time, and I just want to sort of ask one final question, and this is, if somebody's listening to this, on the podcast or whatever at the moment, and they're in that black hole right now, so they're on the roundabout and they're driving round and round, what would you actually say to them? Where should they go to first?
I would, let me just say them. Firstly, I understand where you are. Having been there myself, it's not an easy place to be. It can be really, really tough, and sometimes you can't see a way out. I've had experiences in my life like that. But trying to find some tools that really supported me is where the training has really come from, and equally for Dave and many others that have done the course. There are a few links. If you go to our website, www.bs2b.co.uk, there are some links on that website which take you into some little simple reflective practices that can really help ground in the moment where you are, what you're doing. Post that point, if you feel the need, obviously it would be great if you want to do the training, please engage with the training. That's good. But if you do really feel you need professional help, then I would signpost you to your GP. Or if there's a construction industry helpline, which is a good place to start as well. Not many people know about the helpline, but there is one for the construction industry, 24-hour helpline that you can phone up. It's not just about having issues with regards to mental health. It can be financial, it can be supportive to issues and conditions at work.
Yeah.
And again, if you go onto the website, the numbers on the website as well.
Okay. Yeah, because I didn't know that either, but that sort of cropped up when I'd sort of done the course as well. So, well, that's great. Thank you so much. That's brilliant advice, and I hope that, as we set the intention at the start of this conversation, that this is, if it just helps one person, then I think it's just, it'll be brilliant. But
absolutely.
Thank you so much for bearing with us from a technical point of view and sticking with us, basically.
Wow, pleasure, really. Thank you. And thanks everybody for listening.
And also, just adding to Andy's thing there, it's good to talk. So, let's get the conversations going. So if you are feeling that, talk to someone.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to pass you back to Catherine now, who's just going to wrap everything up for us. So thank you.
Just want to say, if there's anything more you need to know, just drop us a line at info@bs2b.co.uk, and we'll be happy to follow up your questions.
Brilliant. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot.
Fantastic.
Bye for now.
Thank you, Dave and Andy, and thank you, Maria, for handling all of the questions today. At the top of the call, I forgot to mention that we have got a Facebook page now, which is BEtheAction, and I will put up there all of the details that Dave and Andy have just been talking about, links and things, so you can find those all from our Facebook page as well. But if this has stirred conversations for you, if this has triggered thoughts and you want to share things, please jump over to the Facebook page and we'll make sure that we get those conversations going, because it's so important to be talking about these issues. Thank you again for joining us today, and we look forward to joining you on the 10th of March, Friday the 10th of March at 1 p.m. And look forward to talking to you there. Hope the snow isn't too heavy where you are. Have a great weekend. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye. Cheers, Maria.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.